Did you ever hear the tragedy of Vivienne the trust fund baby? I thought not. It's not a story ILMAO would tell you. Before I jump into it, I just wanted to explain the format. The visuals on the screen right now don't have anything to do with the subject at hand. So you can, treat this like a podcast. You can put it down, walk away, do something else. I will be putting up screenshots, but I'll be reading them out. Every once in a while I'll have something on screen that I'm not reading out for the sake of saving time, but I'll always let you know when I do. And the visuals are there for anybody that isn't really into podcasts. Two quick things before we start. One is that throughout the course of this whole series, I often will say video, and what I mean is the series, but when I was originally recording this, I thought that I would put it out as all one video. And the second thing is that sometimes you can hear my chair creaking. I've edited it out where I can, obviously, but when it happens while I'm talking, there's not really anything I can do. I now use a less creaky chair. I'm professional enough to apologize, but not professional enough to re-record for, hours. There's so much here that I don't even know where to start. I guess I'll just jump right in. Okay, so I'm not a super online person, at least relatively speaking, but I don't live under a rock either. So I knew that Vivienne Medrano was a controversial figure, but I think that there's a bit of a boy who cried wolf situation going on. Whenever I looked at people's evidence for her being a bad guy, it was always a nothing burger. Like somebody would say, oh, Vivienne Medrano, literally the devil. And then I'd go look at the source. It'd be a screenshot of a terse but completely normal workplace conversation. Or it'd be the bathtub snakes. For those not in the know, Vivienne Medrano once drew a character naked in a bathtub full of snakes, and that makes her the devil. I'm so tired of hearing about the bathtub snakes. Shut up about the bathtub snakes. Rebecca Sugar drew Edit in any porn, and nobody bothers her about that. Oh, this is me from the future. It turns out actually people did very much bother her about that. But regardless, animators drawing weird lewd stuff is a time-honored tradition that dates back to the Disney Golden Age. Anyway, as you can tell, I got tired of looking into it. So at some point, when people said that Viv was a bad person, I stopped checking their sources. I just rolled my eyes and scrolled on past it. But a few months ago, I stumbled into a rabbit hole, the rabbit hole being Vivienne Medrano's bad behavior, and I've been falling down that rabbit hole ever since. I'm starting to think it's bottomless. So a vague preview of what we'll look into. This doesn't cover everything, but overall, we're going to look at how she dropped almost the entire pilot cast and crew of Hazbin Hotel. We'll look at her studio Spindlehorse and how it, underpaying their workers doesn't seem like it sums up the situation well enough. We'll get there. How another indie animation team hates her so much that they refuse to accept $5,000. I don't know why, but there must be a why. What I've called in my notes the poison debacle, which I'm not even gonna... We'll get there when we get there. Her history of failing to give credit for art. We'll talk a little bit about transphobia. We'll mostly get to it later. And we're also going to talk about her employee, Raphael, even though it's not really something she did wrong. Because it's just, the whole situation with Raphael is so weird. I need to, I can't leave it out. After that, we're going to move on from general wrongdoings to personal accounts from former friends and employees. We will go over the accounts of Starvader, Doll Creep, Faustis, Zurl, Kira, Kat, Ken, Salem, and yes, the infamous Aaron Frost. Even I heard about that one. There's no order system for the people. There's a loose order for just the general wrongdoings. I've tried to order the categories and the incidents within those categories from most credible to least credible, and then after that, within that, from most bad to least bad, so that if somebody gets bored watching the video, they don't walk away thinking, shut up about the bathtub snakes. I'm not going to mention them, but, well, I just did, but, they don't walk away with that vibe. We'll start with the worst stuff. So here's how this all started for me. I watched Hazbin Hotel. Because, of course I did. I thought the pilot showed a great amount of potential, and I've been following the project for over 5 years at this point, so of course I watched Hazbin Hotel. And I thought I didn't like it. You don't have to agree with me to watch the video, it's not what the video is about. I'm just trying to explain how I started looking into this. And when I say I didn't like it, that's a kinder, softer way of saying that I thought it was terrible. I think it's abysmal. I know that it's done perfectly well for itself. I know that it's broken the Prime streaming record, but I genuinely think that it is 99.5%, probably more, just riding on the success of the pilot. But, so, I watched Hazbin Hotel. I thought it was bad. But I wanted to know why. Not why I thought it was bad. I could talk for a very long time. But why did they fumble it? Why was it bad when the pilot was good? I wanted to know more. And I thought it would be a much harder answer to find than it was. It's because they weren't made by the same people. Medrano dropped everyone that worked on the pilot for the series. Well, I don't mean to misrepresent the good woman. She dropped almost everyone. I can count the number of people she retained on my fingers. So, what I wanted to know first was how many people who worked on the pilot were retained, in what categories, what were the percentages. So I screenshotted all of the different frames of the credits for both the pilot and any episode of the series. The credits are the same on each, and fed them into optical character recognition. And an amendment here, I also obviously checked the OCR. I double-checked the data. And sorted out the data. The grand total of names that are in both credits is 9. Sorry if I butcher them. Vivian Medrano, Sam Miller, Adam Bojorquez, Carlos Schwepper, Matthew Margarison, Michael Ruocco, Evan Alderate, Gooseworks, and Perry Grip. Mick Lauer was technically retained, but he was downgraded from Husk to Trenchcoat Demon, so I'm straight up just not counting that. That doesn't count, and he's a more gracious person than I am for accepting the role. So, going back to the Hazbin pilot credits. The credits are a little bit messy since it was a, bit of a scrap-together project. There were a lot of people working double roles. What I did is I just only counted people in the first thing they were credited for, which isn't a perfect system, but it's the best I could do. So if we analyze the data by only counting each person as the first thing they were credited for, so that everyone gets one role, we retained 0 out of 4 writers, 0 out of 4 producers, 0 out of 13 main voice actors, 0 out of 7 additional voice actors, 0 out of 1 voice directors, 0 out of 4 additional character designers, 0 out of 8 visual developers, 1 out of 3 background artists, 0 out of 6 illustrators, 0 out of 9 storyboarders, 0 out of 3 cleanup leads, 4 out of 19 animators, 0 out of 31 cleanup animators, 0 out of 3 compositors, 0 out of 5 sound designers, 2 out of 3 people who worked on the score, and 1 out of 5 people who worked on these songs. Quick recap. This is counting anybody in any role, even if they were credited multiple times. Even counting it like that, the roles that 0 people carried over from were producers, main voice actors, additional character design, visual development, lead animators, lead cleanup animators, SFX, CGI, and visual effects. And the areas in which only Vivian Medrano herself carried over were writers, additional voice actors, illustrators, cleanup animators, and compositors. The series, since it's, studio produced, much less messy, there are only 3 people that double dip. There's 1 person on character layout and character design, and there are 2 people on character layout and retake animation. So I did some math on this. 128 people are credited on the pilot. 97 if you don't count cleanup. 245 people are credited on the series. 218 if you don't count the outsourced labor at Toon City. 169, nice, if you don't count Toon City or the cleanup. Not because cleanup animators don't matter, but because it is one of the most mechanical aspects, and you need so many that it inflates the numbers. And not because outsourced animators don't matter, but because outsourcing the animation is, as far as I know, completely out of Medrano's control, and is something that would have happened even if, every single person came back on. So not counting cleanup animators or outsourced labor, 9.3% of the people who worked on the pilot were retained for the main show, and 5.3% of the people who worked on the main series had worked on the pilot. I think I'm starting to see the problem. Except, I was lying. Much later, I realized that you can't just take the credits raw, because the credits for the series are the same on every episode, as I said. But Bento Box animated the first 7 episodes. Spindlehorse animated the last episode. You may recognize that name. It's Vivienne's own studio, the one that she founded and the one that makes Helluva Boss. The point is, there is a whole section of people credited on the Hazbin Hotel series that were actually only brought in for the last episode, and they were brought in as an emergency measure when Bento Box just refused to do it. Meaning that the animators, the 4 animators that I credited as being retained, actually weren't. They happened to work on it at the very last minute because literally nobody else would. So yeah, to recap, we had, in the total 9 retained, not counting McLauer, because that. Vivienne, obviously, creator and such. Sam Miller, who worked on the backgrounds. Then we had 4 animators and 3 people on music. And those 4 animators don't count. And Perry Grip, I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure that Perry Grip only did the opening credits jingle, as opposed to on the pilot he helped write songs. And Gooseworks and Evan Alderate worked on the score, not on the songs. Not that that matters, they still worked on it, but the songs were made by completely different people. And then Vivienne Medrano, obviously, and pretty much the only person that was just retained in their full capacity was Sam Miller. She should go play the lottery. No, I'm just kidding. You don't increase your odds of winning the lottery by being Vivienne Medrano's best friend, for now. She likes to cycle through them, as we'll get to much later. So to sum it up, out of the entire pilot crew, Vivienne Medrano as creator, Sam Miller on backgrounds, and then 2 people on the score. And every single other person that worked on the pilot did not come back, and every single other person that worked on the main series had not worked on the pilot. So the problem becomes evident. And pretty much everyone knows about the cast being recast. It was a huge scandal. But I have not seen, and this doesn't mean that they haven't, but I have not seen a single other person mention the rest of the crew. And for a second there, I was doubting myself, and I was like, it's so weird that no animators or artists, except for the one, maybe we didn't mean for them to come back. Maybe this is a misunderstanding on my part. How can this be happening and no one is talking about it? I must be misunderstanding something. No, I shouldn't have doubted myself. I found a tweet from Viv from March 2022. Put it up on the screen right now and I'll read it for you. Artists working on the show are finally able to announce, and I'm thrilled that so many of the artists who helped craft the original vision are on board to make this show what it is destined to be. I can't express how excited I am. #Hazbin Hotel. Seriously, it's amazing. So thankful. Smiley emoji with hearts. Reply to her own tweet. The indie The indie spirit of the pilot lives on. And now artists old and new are gonna bring you all a fully realized animated season. I cannot wait. Purple demon emoji, music notes emoji, heart emoji. I'm sorry. That genuinely The indie spirit of the pilot lives on Prime Video. Animated by Bento Box. Okay. So yeah, that's a tweet. I don't know if she was lying or if maybe she can't count or if a lot of artists were going to come back on and then didn't. I don't know what's up with that. So yeah, pretty much everyone already knew that she dropped the voice cast like hot potatoes, but she dropped everybody like hot potatoes, except for Sam Miller, and Gooseworks and Evan, and Perry Kripp. And by the way, in the pilot and pre-pilot eras, Viv would constantly go on about how much she loved her cast and crew, how she owed everything to them, how they meant the world to her, how they were like family. So that's kind of the cherry on top to this whole thing, but honestly, that's kind of the least of our problems at this point. When I was editing this audio, I realized that I never explained what the Hunicast was, which is insane, because it's a massive deal. It's just that I was in the Hazbin fandom like 5 years ago, and the Hunicast was like a household name at that point. If you were talking about Hazbin Hotel, you didn't need to explain what it was. The concept of somebody that is at all interested in Hazbin Hotel not knowing what the Hunicast is just didn't even cross my mind. But I will explain it now. I just went to the wiki and it's actually pronounced Hunicast. Makes more sense, my bad. The Hunicast is actually still ongoing, but the episodes that are relevant to this were all in the past, so I'm going to be using past tense. So, the Hunicast was a series of live streams hosted by Ashley Nichols and Michael Kovach. Ashley Nichols was the lead cleanup animator, as well as just a regular animator on Hazbin Hotel. And she was once great close friends with Vivian Madrano, and now no longer speaks to her, which puts her in a very, very large category. There's a large roster of people that fit that criteria. And Michael Kovach was the voice of Angel Dust, and they also happen to be a couple in real life. It was hosted by those two, but other members of the cast and crew, and Vivian herself, would occasionally show up. Edward Bosco, in particular, Alistair's speaking voice, was a very common participant. But at various points, the Hunicast also featured Viv herself, Vaggie, Nifty, Husk, Serpentious, Cherry Bomb, and Tom Trench's voice actors, Charlie's singing voice actor, and Dave Capdeville, one of the writers. In the vast majority of the Hazbin-related Hunicast episodes, Nichols was also live streaming her screen as she animated for the pilot, but there are a couple that are just sort of straight-up podcasts. So the Hunicast was a place where various members of the Hazbin cast and crew would come together and chat about the behind-the-scenes of Hazbin Hotel, about random other shit, and often they would talk in character. If you want to get a feel for it, you can look up Hunicast Animatic, and that'll show you some clips of sort of the best of the Hunicast without actually having to listen to the whole Hunicast. Look up the dad jokes one, that one's good. There are, it looks like, 16 non-charity Hazbin-related episodes of the Hunicast from before the pilot came out. So those are the most relevant ones here. Hunicast episodes usually hovered at about 3.5 hours long, but they could be as short as 2.5 hours to as long as 5 hours. Which is why, by the way, I never watched the Hunicast. I did like Hazbin Hotel, I was in the fandom, but I wasn't that into Hazbin Hotel. And I never really saw the appeal. But regardless of what I thought, the Hunicast was extremely popular. I just grabbed a watermelon margarita because talking about Vivian Madrano makes me feel like I need a drink. The first thing that made the Hunicast incredibly important is that it was a source, actually I'm going to say the main source, of fan engagement. At this point in time, Hazbin Hotel had not come out yet, but the Hazbin fanbase still existed and was sizable. And that is in massive part thanks to the Hunicast. Viewers would chat with the cast and crew, and like I said, the cast would talk in character. It was just... It kept Hazbin fresh in people's minds. It It gave people more to consume, more to think about. It personalized the crew to fans, and that made them care about the project more. The importance of the Hunicast cannot be overstated. The second reason that the Hunicast was incredibly important is because it made a ton of money, which went to funding the Hazbin Hotel pilot. However much money you're imagining, it was probably more. Viewers could donate, and the proceeds, unless specified otherwise, there were a few charity episodes, would go to the making of Hazbin Hotel. In particular, one very big draw for donations was that the cast would take requests from people that donated, usually to say something in character or to play out little skits in character. I can't tell you exactly how much the Hunicast made. They don't broadcast that number. Even if I was dedicated enough, which I'm not, to go through every Hunicast episode and write down the donations in Super Chat and add them all up in a calculator, that still wouldn't tell you, because donations were accepted both through YouTube and through a platform called Streamlabs. So I don't have an exact figure to give you, or even a vague figure to give you, on the overall profit of the Hunicast. Here is what I can tell you. The charity streams are the key here, because even though the profits obviously went to charity, the charity streams did show how much money they were making. Because that's kind of just what you usually do when you host a charity live stream. It's exciting to watch the number go up and everyone's happy. The Hunicast episode, Australia Wildfire Relief Charity Stream, made $30,827.40. So, on the one hand, this was a charity stream, which I would imagine makes people much more likely to donate. So this probably made more than the average episode. Although the difference might not be as drastic as you'd think, because the charity streams were much less popular. The Australia stream has 730,000 views, and the most popular few episodes of the Hunicast would reach 2 million views. But regardless, this is speculation, we can't know. The thing to keep in mind here is frequency. The charity streams, I would hope, made more, but they were also much, much rarer. There were only 4 charity-related Hazbin streams, and 2 of them were after Hazbin had come out. And we'll only count the normal episodes that came out before Hazbin did, because I actually don't know what happened with the proceeds after the Hazbin pilot came out. I would bet pretty good money that they just went to helluva, but they certainly weren't used to fund the Hazbin pilot. So, there were 16 non-charity Hazbin-related episodes before the pilot came out. And to be clear, the Hunicast is a project that the cast and crew undertook themselves. It was led by Nichols and Kovacs. This was done off the clock. It was a labor of love. It wasn't made by Medrano. She only showed up in 2 or 3. The Hunicast was a project undertaken by the cast and crew, without Viv's involvement, on their own initiative, and for no compensation, and all of it went towards making the Hazbin Hotel pilot, and that's not even counting the immaterial value that it served as a way to engage the fanbase. The Hunicast was a massive f***ing deal. I hope that serves as a snapshot of how this was not a pilot made under normal circumstances, and this is not a situation in which what is otherwise a normal business practice would be at all acceptable. A very, very common argument against this being a problem with the cast is that it's completely normal for voices to change after pilots, and yeah, that's true. That's 100% true. But Hazbin isn't a normal pilot. Usually, pilot voice actors haven't put in hundreds of hours of unpaid labor and been a major component of the show's success. It's not a normal pilot. I don't even know how to explain how different it is. Another very common argument is that it's a musical. Frankly, I don't care. You can learn how to sing, like Kovacs can sing, or you could have doubled up on hiring a voice actor and a singing actor, and I know that would have been more expensive, but A, I don't think that saving money is one of Viv's goals overall, looking at the voice actors in helluva, and B, yeah, I don't care. You owe it to your pilot cast With the work that they did and the contributions they made to the success of the pilot and the loyalty they had to you, you should have just double cast, even if it would have been not as sound business wise. And then another common argument is that the original cast couldn't legally return due to something to do with unions, and this one is just straight up misinformation. That's just not true. To be really clear, I'm not a pilot purist. I don't think that every single voice actor needed to be retained. But dropping so many of the people who helped get you where you are the second you think you've made it big is a disgusting thing to do. And quite apart from the moral component of it all, it has not improved the quality of the show. The absence of Michael Kovac in particular is a gaping hole. What it makes me think of is the Ship of Theseus. You've probably heard of it. It's a thought experiment about how much of something can be replaced before it becomes something different. Imagine you're the captain of a ship. Sometimes parts of your ship get worn down or broken. When they do, you replace them, and eventually you come to a point where every single part of your ship has been replaced at some point. If no part of the original ship remains, is it still the ship you set sail with? And if it isn't, at what point did that change occur? And we have a real Ship of Theseus situation on our hands with Hazbin Hotel. Personally, I don't see it as the same creative property. I see them as completely different because they were made by completely different people. Medrano obviously had no legal obligation to retain any of the team that created the Hazbin Hotel pilot, but if any such thing as a creative obligation can be said to exist, an obligation to try and make sure your work is not terrible, then she had a creative obligation, and more importantly, she had a moral obligation. I'm not even very interested in arguing this point. Vivian Medrano did not summon the Hazbin Hotel pilot fully formed out of the ether. It was created by a team. And every single person that worked on the pilot brought something unique to it. Some obviously brought more than others, but everyone brought something, and for every person that wasn't retained in the move to A24, something that made the pilot what it was lost. Again, don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that every single person should have been retained. That would be stupid. It's perfectly acceptable not to retain cleanup animator number 7, who came in at the last moment and worked on 3 minutes worth of shots. It's another thing entirely not to retain people like Ashley Nichols, Michael Kovac, Edward Bosco, who were in nearly every episode of the Hunicast. To zoom in on the voice actor bit, let's check out Thank You and Goodnight. Thank You and Goodnight is a farewell song that was released very recently. It was produced by the original singing voice of Alistair, and it features the original singing voice actors of Angel Dust, Charlie, Cherry Bomb, and Nifty. It was released, I think, at the same time as the first episode of Hazbin proper, and completely without Vivian Medrano's involvement. And the description and the pinned comment are not aggressive. They're not even passive-aggressive. They even congratulate, Vivian and the new cast. They're very professional. But I don't think it's hard to see that professionalism is a layer of plausible deniability. There are also things in there that are very candid and a little bit heartbreaking. I'm going to show the full description and the full pinned comment on screen in the interest of completion and, unbiasedness, but I'm only going to read some selections. And it's worth noting that it does say multiple times that they have no hard feelings, that they're happy for the new cast, etc. That's definitely worth noting. I don't want to cherry pick, but personally I look at this and I see mostly professionalism, not sincerity. It's the equivalent of signing "thank you for your time" in a workplace email to somebody that you actually hate. There are just some environments where everyone has to be adults and play nice. But even in those environments, people will slip in little remarks. And if you completely disagree with me and you're, frustrated, dude, you're literally putting up evidence that disproves you, they are saying that they're fine, I completely understand that. I can completely see how that's a very understandable position to take. That's fair. But personally, the grander picture and the other evidence really keeps me from taking this at face value. Q. Why were you all recast? A. There's been a lot of speculation that we couldn't join the union, we can't sing, A24 forced the rehire. The simple answer is that Viv always wanted a Broadway cast, and when the show got picked up, she had the opportunity to get it. That's show business, baby, no hard feelings. Also, I thought Ed was, I thought Ed was the voice of Alistair. A. Ed was the speaking voice of Alistair in the pilot. I was the singing voice. We asked Ed to do the opening monologue, but he said he couldn't participate as it might jeopardize his role as Striker in Helluva. And then, fairly soon after, that answer was edited to he felt it might be a conflict of interest, as he also voices Striker in Helluva. This edit happened too quickly for the Wayback Machine to catch it, but there are replies to the pinned comment that quote the original wording. And this isn't mentioned anywhere, but singing the song, Vagie's in the background because her voice actress didn't want to come back. Singing the song are Cherry Bomb, Husk, Angel, Alistair, Charlie, Nifty. Except Husk's voice actor didn't come back, and they don't mention that anywhere. But I think it's odd that Gabriel Brown is doing double duty as Alistair and Husk, whereas Vagie, who is a more important character than Husk, when her voice actress didn't want to come back, they didn't include her in the song. And I think maybe it's not a coincidence that, along with Ed Bosco, Mick Lauer is, I think, the only voice actor here still affiliated with Medrano. He was, like I said, he was the prestigious role of Trenchcoat Demon in the Hazbin series. It could just be a coincidence, but I think it's more likely than not that Mick Lauer originally was in the song and then was removed for similar reasons as why Ed Bosco wouldn't come in the first place. Oh, Vagie also still associated, or Vagie's voice actor also is still associated with Viv. So none of the ones that are associated with Viv came back. And they state very clearly that the only reason they were dropped is because Viv wanted to drop them. And Ed Bosco thought that participating might jeopardize his role as Striker. Maybe because Vivienne would can him because she's a petty bitch. I'm sorry, having done all of this, well, calling it research is a little grandiose, but having combed through all this shit, I hold an intense disdain for Vivienne Medrano that you might not have gotten to yet. But I hope you will by the end of the video. I hope you'll join me. Gabriel C. Brown, the singing voice of Alistair and the person that posted Thank You and Goodnight, has been not open, but more open than the rest about the general sort of f***ed-upness of the whole situation. I think for a couple of reasons. I think both because he's just a little bit older than most of the rest of the main players, and also because he has a lot of stuff going on other than voice acting, so I don't think he's as afraid as the others that he might get blacklisted from his dream career. As far as I know, Gabriel C. Brown was the only voice actor to publicly react with anger and despair to the original news. On October 12, 2021, Brown tweeted the following: I pour my heart and my soul into everything I do, but lately I've been feeling like no matter how hard I try, it isn't good enough. The fact that somebody noticed the attention to detail and took the time to comment on it absolutely made my day. Thank you to all who noticed, heart emoji. Somebody replied with, yeah, it was good. Just the original song you first made, Insane, was better than the new version. All my remakes aren't that great either. Sometimes remakes are good, sometimes not. Just keep trying. Brown replied with, I'm not talking about this specific video. I'm talking about the fact that despite my time and effort, I was recast. Somebody else replies with, you were recast as the singing voice for Alistair? And Brown says, yeah, they replaced me. Then somebody else replies with a tweet that I can't see, but it doesn't super matter. And Brown replies to that with, thank you, Katie. That's extremely kind. Truth is, I would rather be involved in a smaller project that values me than a bigger project that doesn't. The BBU family is the best. Heart emoji. The middle tweet, the despite my time and effort one, has since been deleted, but all of the others are still up, even though, honestly, I feel like that last one is kind of the most c***y one. Also, I'm going to put some screenshots from Gabriel C. Brown's YouTube fandom wiki page up, and I would highly recommend pausing to read them, because this guy has led a wild life. Here's a YouTube comment from Hazbin's voice director on this being dumb as hell. I laughed once I heard they were all replaced. The irony of it, one of the most successful indie projects removed all traces of its indie roots. That starts to sum it up. Also, all of the voice actors were completely f***ed over, but the most upsetting one to me is the voice actress of Cherry Bomb. Cherry Bomb's VA, Krystal LaPorte, got the news that she would not be coming back as Cherry Bomb only very shortly before her fiance died. I think her fiance died of pulmonary disease on October 18th, 2021, and email was sent on October 7th. Krystal has gone on record saying that it was the last heartbreak he ever helped her through, so that's pretty fucked up. I mean, Vivian sent out the email before the fiance's death, not after, and she also didn't kill the fiance, but I think it's worth mentioning just because I don't know, it's just awful. And if you were thinking that it couldn't get any worse than that, I'm about to rock your world. So, after Krystal LaPorte's fiance and partner of 9 years died, Ashley Nichols hosted a live stream to raise money for, the incredible amount of medical debt and also lease obligations and the cost of his cremation and urn and just a bunch of other shit. So Ashley Nichols hosted a live stream where donations would go towards that. And Vivian Madrano told them that they couldn't use any of the Hazbin characters' voices. Like, they couldn't take voice requests for any of the Hazbin characters. It's 3 minutes into the video. Nichols says, "We can't take any Hazbin-related requests because Vivzie doesn't want anybody using any Hazbin-related stuff because it's her IP." Motherfucker! A man died! Like, if you're not gonna help out at all, which I know you could because I know you're rich, you could at least not actively get in the way. Everyone involved here knew that voice requests were the biggest moneymaker in the Hunicast. A lot of people came to the stream because, it was a big get-together to send off and honor a man that they all really cared for, and also an attempt to gather some funds for his new widow, who has been left with over $7 million in medical debt. So, lots of people showed up because, that's sort of an important event to show up to. Probably don't need to say this, but Viv was not one of those people. Although, in her defense, I doubt that she was invited. Also in the stream were Michael Kovac and Edward Bosco, the voices of Angel Dust and Alistair. The two most popular characters, and the two most frequent voice actors that would appear on the Hunicast. If Vivian Madrano had not said, "You can't speak in the voice of Alistair or Angel Dust or take requests," this stream would have earned significantly more money. That is just sort of a fact, the way that the earth is round. And also on screen, I'm going to put up a screenshot of a Discord conversation, and a screenshot of an email. Do keep in mind that both of these are alleged. These are hang on. I categorize evidence for Viv sucking in 5 different categories, from most to least credible. Documented, substantiated sourced allegations, unsubstantiated sourced allegations, substantiated unsourced allegations, and finally unsubstantiated, unsourced allegations. So this is what I would call substantiated, unsourced allegations. They're substantiated in that there is some evidence, but they are, well, I mean, there's a limited pool of who it could have been, but if they are true, they were leaked by an anonymous person. Nobody was willing to stand up and put their real name behind these, but they do have some evidence. Obviously, it's not... Actually, let me take a quick side note to talk about criminal and civil law. No, please don't go. It's relevant. You've probably heard of the phrase, beyond a reasonable doubt. Guilty beyond a reasonable doubt is the standard that you have to prove when you are prosecuting in criminal court. What's less commonly known is preponderance of the evidence. Preponderance of the evidence is the threshold that you have to reach to win in civil court, and it's a fancy way of saying that it has to be more likely than unlikely. And a lot of this video is covered by preponderance of the evidence. Basically, what I'm saying is it technically possible that Vivziepop is actually a really nice guy, and everything to come is just sort of coincidental or unfortunate or paints her in the wrong light? Sure, anything's possible. But is it more likely that the person stumbling through so many controversies and so much bad behavior and so many made and then dropped friends, is it more likely that that person is actually pretty chill and everybody else is always in the wrong? Or is it more likely that one person just kind of happens to be a to still view Medrano as a good person through all of this really necessitates jumping through quite a few hoops. And at some point it just becomes a matter of Occam's razor. The simpler solution is usually the more likely one. It's obviously completely possible to fake a screenshot of just about anything. But, well, you'll have to decide yourself, but I don't know, I believe both of these. The source that leaked these has also, in the past, leaked things that were then later proven to have been true, so that gives that source a little bit of credibility. We'll get to them, we'll mention that later. But the Discord screenshot, all names are redacted, but it's presumably a conversation amongst the pilot cast, and somebody says that Viv intended to keep Michael and Ed from the beginning, and she also implied she'd do what she could to keep everyone, and then turned around and told people she fired them because they're friends with me, or at least one of the reasons she fired them. Then there's a redacted message that I feel like it's probably from, assuming this is all real, allegations, etc., is probably from Michael about Angel Dust, because I think that's the only character with a unique minority status. But, censored for plausible deniability. And then the email is, and I'm more likely to believe this one than I am to believe the Discord screenshot, even though honestly I believe that too. This is allegedly the email that Viv sent to the original cast. Basically she says, yeah, we dropped you all, but you cannot even begin to express how valued you are all to me. Blah, 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 blah. I can't thank you enough. Yeah, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for believing in my project. Thank you for believing in me, loving the characters, bringing them to life. Good people, good friends. Whatever. There aren't enough margaritas in the world to get me through this woman's behavior. That was Vivziepop Sucks Eggs Part 1. Subscribe if you want to see Part 2. And also please like and comment, because it might motivate the people holding me in their basement and forcing me to make Vivziepop videos to give me more gruel. Or more margaritas, either would be acceptable.